Catus Maximus here. A quick 30 ratchet review and comparison, 1/4 inch drive. I'm going to go through this pretty darn quickly. I'm just going to do a quick close-ups and sounds of the ratchet mechanisms on all these. We have a bunch of different brands here. There isn't any Snap-on or Mac. There's a ton of ratchets. There could be 100 different brands here. And just wanted to bring you a comparison of just quite a variety. There's lots of ratchet comparisons on YouTube, but I don't think there's any where they're comparing 30 1/4 inch ratchets alone. And yes, that means between 3/8 and 1/2 inch and all that kind of stuff. I have an unhealthy amount of ratchets. To get through this closely, I'll just do a close-up and a quick talk about just about each one of these. And several of these, like the Pittsburghs and the Proto and this gear wrench, I have independent videos of. I'll just talk about each one quickly. I'll do a conclusion, and after the conclusion, I'll open up a select few to compare some ratchet mechanisms. But I'll put that at the end, so you don't have to endure that unless you're interested on what's inside some of these. I did a review of a set, which is a compact socket set that came with this GM Power Torque, which are currently available at O'Reilly's. At the time I made this video, this ratchet can be purchased independently and comes with a little quick release 1/4 inch adapter, and it is super thin. It is not the strongest. It is press fit together, so it's not exactly rebuildable. Not the strongest mechanism, just because of the size constraints, but it is absolutely the thinnest ratchet I've ever seen. It's thinner than ratcheting box wrenches. Here's one of those Harbor Freight long handle ratcheting box wrench, and it's significantly thinner than even one of those. And, it works pretty well. You can always tell ratchets that have fixed or independent pawls, and it always seems that I've had better luck with ratchets with fixed pawls. How you know is if the switch doesn't move, then you know it's an independent pawl. Where if we take a ratchet like this, when the switch moves, it means that it's permanent. It's as one piece with the actual ratchet pawl, and I've always had better luck. They always seem to be stronger in that style. And then this is a power belt. Let's get a little closer look. And they've always been pretty nice. These were sold once again at Shucks and O'Reilly's Auto Parts. I don't know if they sell them anymore at that store, but they're still available. And they're not bad for a quick release. They're not the world's strongest ratchet, but they've always worked really reliably for me. And they are coarse tooth. AutoZone, they have a little 2-piece set of these tiny little Titans, super short handles, super small compact head. It also has a fixed pawl design, so it's pretty solid. The nice thing about this tiny little Titan is it actually can be rebuilt, which I thought was nice. And it's just super compact. Here's a 13mm socket, and if we put it on there, we can see the head. That's the size of the head is probably 14mm, but it is super compact, really handy. This is a very early Titan clutch style ratchet. These are great because they're reversible by pushing the anvil through. The one issue and it makes them perfectly flat on top. They're not super high torque because they are clutch type. Many manufacturers have clutch type ratchets. And because of that non-reversing nature, you can get them stuck. You can unthread a bolt to the point where you can't get the ratchet or the bolt out. Then you're stuck trying to hacksaw it out. And of course, the other weird thing about using a clutch ratchet is there's no sound. It's kind of weird. You just hear the clinking of the metal and you don't really know if the ratchet's working. People talk about back drag, where you have a bolt that's hard to reach except for it's in a really clean threaded hole, and so it has almost no resistance. So you're ratcheting and then the bolt is just twisting back and forth just due to the minor resistance of a pawl. These have almost no back resistance whatsoever. So you can just be somewhere and just kind of do this action and the bolt will eventually fall out. Here is a Thorson open head ratchet. This is what open head ratchets used to be like. Thorson's are a little nicer. They put a ring around the outside. The head is press fit and the ratchet pawl is the reversing lever. I've done a review of these Harbor Freights. They're not, they're great for the price. They don't have much back drag. but the switch is independent of the ratchet pawls. This is just a clutch version, a long handle version of the Titan clutch wrench. AutoZone came out some really nice Duralast ratchets. I don't know who they were made by at the time, but they were really nice. Surprisingly nice. And then a few years later, they came out the 72 tooths, which are still pretty nice. They're made by the same company, but they're a lot cheaper. But they're still pretty strong. And then, of course, they have flex head versions of those same Duralast and 72 tooth. For a while, Stanley had these called Micro Tufts. I liked them because a nice soft handle. They had a real compact head and a really oversized reversing lever, which I kind of liked. And these worked out great for me. These are the more professional versions. These were the first generation of those Duralast, and I'm going to do a whole Duralast comparison, but as far as I'm concerned, they're one of the best ratchets I've ever seen in an auto parts store when these came out. They are really impressive. I've had friends buy these and just do crazy things with them. I mean, just hardened large exhaust studs with cheater bars on 3/8 ratchets, and they just take it. There's a Hot Rod magazine where they did a big comparison of a bunch of half-inch ratchets, including these original style Duralasts, and the Duralast came out on top. And they're true sealed. They actually have O-rings under the switch and the anvil. They're the only ratchet I've seen that's they make sure that it's really, really well sealed. The gear wrenches do use O-rings. This is just an Ace Basic ratchet, but they're actually pretty common. These have been around for a while. These are independent pawl, but you always know this style because you can see the little holes where the pawls are. This was another compact, through-hole socket set ratchet. This is a Mountain brand from CarQuest, and it's actually really pretty high quality. It has an extremely strong ratchet mechanism in it for a little 3 ratchet. We have the proverbial Craftsman. This is one of the American-made ones. This is not, their most expensive. This was their base unit ratchet, and these have always worked out okay. They've never been real strong, and quite frank, I never really liked the way they looked. They weren't real pretty compared to a lot of other ratchets, but they have worked. There's an original version of the Duralast Flex coarse tooth ratchets. We have an old Williams Super ratchet. So this is a vintage one from the 60s and 70s. It has a bunch of different little parts. I like this one because I kind of like the little post for a switch down there. This is also interesting because they use a threaded collar to assemble it. We have a compact head from AutoZone, and that works out pretty well. It uses a mechanism like a reversing box wrench, and it's pretty small, but this little Titan, maybe about the same size, but the Titan's a little taller of a head, so it has a little stronger ratcheted mechanism in there. This is an Ace Professional. There's a lot of Ace hardware stores, and it's a pretty good ratchet. To tell you the truth, the Ace Professional ratchet's always... I've had this one for a long time. I mean, the knurling got totally messed up when they made it. The wheels were pressed in way too hard and just totally ruined that, but it's been a good ratchet. I've done a review of this gear wrench. This is the 120 tooth that works pretty well, but it has microscopic pawls in it, and I don't know how well it's going to hold up in the long term. Also did a review of this Proto, even what's inside, and it's a nice professional ratchet. The reversing mechanism and switch is not my favorite. I thought they were a little cheap for how expensive Proto are. And then finally, we have various. This is like an Allied Tools thumb ratchet, but this thing has always worked out really great and has a really nice, solid reverse lever and is screwed together so it can actually be serviced. This is a no-name, but I always liked it because it was this came in some weird kind of wrench that went over the top of this. So it was a 1/4-inch wrench that you could pop this out and use it as a thumb ratchet. One of those odd tools. And then this is a GM Power Torque. These are also at O'Reilly's. They were really cheap, but it was like super loose, and I had to do some customizations where I put in a washer and I had to get a better snap ring or I think it has spiral ring, which was just too loose, so I put a snap ring in there. And once I got this tightened up, then this started working really well. But as it came from O'Reilly's, it was terrible. And I don't know if I picked up these SKs, but these are SKs. And since roundhead ratchets, a lot of very cheap tools, trashy tools, come with roundhead ratchets. Oftentimes there'll be toolboxes at garage sales, bins at thrift stores with roundhead ratchets. It's always worth going through those because occasionally actually worthy roundhead ratchets will pop up. SK is known, I believe, for inventing the roundhead ratchet. And so we have a couple of different exact same ratchets, but they're just slightly different generations. We can see this one with the carbon finish has a really nice reverse lever that was improved over this, what I think is a slightly older one, where the chrome started to come off this reverse lever, and the anvil was chrome. These are really easy to rebuild because you just need needle nose pliers to get at those snap rings. And finally, Harbor Freight has these ratchets that are reversing heads that are like ratcheting box wrenches. And I like this. One of them had a super long handle, so I bought it and just took off the 3/8 head to use it as a extreme long handle 1/4 inch ratchet. Even those are ratcheting compact ratcheting box wrench style heads, they are pretty stiff. They do appear to have an improved mechanism in these, knowing that they're selling them as ratchets. So in conclusion, after doing a quick overview of all these different ratchets, is obviously the Harbor Freight and Pittsburghs have come up in quality, and for the price they're hard to beat, but they're obviously not the best. As far as what I have here, these first generation Duralast were just so much better. Were just such a good ratchet. At the end of this video I'm going to go inside, but they're just really well made. You really know it because when you find a ratchet that actually has, clean oil regularly and the safety glasses, this kind of stamping is you only see that really on the expensive professional brands. Their 72 tooth ones were made significantly cheaper. Another thing about ratchets, when they're screwed like this into the body of the ratchet, if you service it often enough, it'll eventually strip out the threads. That's why it's bad to do that. Real professional, real nice ones go through the head of the ratchet and thread into the plate. That way, if the screws and or the plate strip out, you just get new screws and a plate. If this strips out, you have to get a whole new ratchet. And the mechanism in these is pretty much unbeatable. I know from anybody that I've heard about, including the Hot Rod Magazine review, that these Duralast ratchets, the head will shear before they ever skip. On these early generation ones, there's just no question. And on some of these, and I think it is on this 1/4 inch, they use a hex to integrate the switch into the anvil, and so you could actually customize and move the switch so it's pointing upwards or to each side, which is kind of odd. Never seen a ratchet that had that ability, and I'll show that at the end of the video. The gear wrench ratchets are the 120 tooth are nice because they do have an O-ring, so they try to seal them, but the ratchet mechanism doesn't seem like it's going to hold up. This is a ratchet where I believe the mechanism would give out before the anvil did, twist it off. Another thing I'll recommend generally against is quick release ratchets. They are a little weaker. Having that hole in the middle of the anvil is nice because they lock on the socket and it doesn't want to fall off. And then you can press the button and then they just drop off when you need to only use one hand. But you sacrifice strength for that. Not a ton, but you do sacrifice some. All the real professional grade tools, Mac and Macco and all those Snap-on, all those brands really do make excellent ratchets. And but this is the show really that you don't always have to spend top dollar to really get pretty nice ratchets. These Pittsburghs, there's a lot of YouTube videos of them, and a lot of them really take a lot of abuse before they fail, even with not having the greatest mechanism, and I can describe why that happens a little bit. But really, there's nowadays, it seems, and over the last few years, if you keep your eye out, there really are some real nice tools made, and you don't have to pay absolutely top shelf prices to get ratchets that will be within a few percentage points of ultimate strength and longevity. And when it comes to warranty, that's a big deal. One of the things about Harbor Freight is like it's almost replaced what Craftsman used to be, because their tools aren't the greatest, but they have a lot of stores. And you can just get your hand tools replaced. I broke it. I know what I was doing. I'm going to get a different tool to get the fastener out, but at least I can get it replaced easily just by going to a reasonably close by Harbor Freight. Which is obviously an issue with a lot of professional power tool brands, is because as a commercial user, their commercial professional brands are great, but as a independent consumer, they really have a you can really have a tough time getting warranties out of Snap-on, Proto, a lot of those companies. A lot of the guys on the trucks just don't want to deal with somebody calling them on the phone, coming to the truck just to replace a box wrench or something. And that's generally been my experience. I've run into a few Snap-on guys and other truck guys who've been great, but generally speaking, I mean, it just has not been, oh, sure, and we'll just replace it. It's always been some kind of hassle. And it's been one of the reasons why I haven't really been insistent on buying real expensive professional grade tools, is because a big portion of what you're paying for has to be the service, because the improvement of a Snap-on or a Matco or a Proto ratchet over a Duralast that costs less than half as much, or often way less than half as much, I mean, they're only a few percentage points stronger. I mean, a 1/4 inch ratchets, I mean, a 1/4 inch of any grade of steel is only going to take in the range of 100 foot-pounds. It doesn't matter what it's made out of. Okay, so that's pretty much concludes my big long rambling discussion about various ratchets, 1/4 inch drive ratchets. I really appreciate you guys watching. And just after this outro, I'm going to look inside a few of these to compare mechanisms. But otherwise, you can click off and please subscribe. Catus Maximus out. Alrighty. So, as just a quick comparison, the Harbor Freight ratchets, and this design has been around for a while. Let's take both of these here. So this is an old design that's been around for a real long time, where you have the two little holes in the ratchet. Proto has ones. They're real coarse, but they don't have much back play. And you can see it's just, the little pawls are just independently floating. And the reason that they're so strong is there isn't some ratchets, the force is really close. And that's the hard, why floating pawl ratchets have such a hard time, and especially compact head ones like Snap-on and Proto. They're trying to make the heads a little smaller while still having the same strength. That means that you have less space in here to have big long pawls that have a steeper angle. So if the pawl is like right next to it on the side, obviously it's going to rely more on the raw shearing strength and grip of the teeth, rather than designs that are more like this, where it's getting to a more obtuse angle, and the ratchet is actually trying to run over the top of the pawl, trying to spread the head apart. And it's just that simple angle, where you have the ratchet pawl trying to run over the top, changes the force to less shearing force and more compression force, which is the strongest way any metal is. And that's why those designs work so well. The Harbor Freight is just a finer tooth version of the same thing, but they have a pretty steep angle. And then the reason you flip the switch is just moving one pawl away from the ratchet head or the other. If they had designed it just a little bit differently, you could have a center position, the ratchet could actually lock up. Now, the Duralast ratchets that I really recommend is because real traditional heavy-duty ratchets are just like this. They have a rocking pawl, they have a big head, there's no extra space, so the pawl is well supported. They have a big ball dentin in the bottom, so that the ratchet pawl really stays in place. And this is super duper strong. As it rotates, it tries to suck that. That pawl does have a steeper angle, but it is pushed in there incredibly hard from the ball dentant. Another thing I liked about these early Duralast, these initial of the new professional ones, initial new, because they already changed them just a few years. Even the same initial ones have a little bit different coloring on the handle. So this design isn't used that much because it requires a lot of metal. And then it's even more work to actually have a little tap and diode switch. But what's nice about these is you can pull out a screw and you can pull out the switch if it will cooperate here. And what I really like about these Duralast is there's even a little replaceable O-ring under the switch. The reason the newer Duralasts are cheaper is because they have a similar design. It is fine-toothed, but it's still a pretty good design. But it seems that it's not quite made by the same. I mean, they're not the same grade. There isn't a through hole. The switch is pressed, so you can't actually take that apart. These angles down here are different. And if it was the same manufacturer, you'd think that would be a little bit more similar. And so that's one of the reasons why these are a little... They're still good, but they're a bit cheaper. This little mountain one I was pretty impressed by because it has a very strong ratchet mechanism. If ratcheting box wrenches had mechanisms like this, then they would be nearly as strong as regular box wrenches. So that was just a quick look inside, just to show you what you might expect to see when you really want to have strong ratcheting mechanisms versus ones that may not be quite as good, but still work quite well. Anyway, thanks for watching.